Hi, my name is Richard Crawford, host of Supply and Demand, an enlightening webcast show where we delve into the dynamic world of the global supply chain and where we navigate through the complexities, disruptions, and innovations that shape this vital network of interconnected businesses. From sourcing raw materials to delivering finished products, we'll uncover the challenges that arise at each stage and explore the strategies for optimizing efficiency and sustainability. And each week, we'll highlight and discuss a specific supply chain event. And of course, I'm joined each week by my co-host and CEO of the Atlas Network, Mr. Kareem Kafuri.
Hey, Richard, how are you? How's it
How
going?
are you, buddy?
Man, it's been a little bit since we've done a little show. I'm happy we're back at it. I think we got some interesting speakers in the next couple of weeks and in the coming months. We've got some amazing opportunities and shows that are coming about. I've been real busy on my end doing all kinds of crazy things that I'm sure the audience is going to find out about. But in short, I'm working on a book which is called Supply Chain Seesaw: The Ups and Downs. It's all about basically the trials and tribulations of supply chain management, and excited to be. I'm sure we're going to be talking more about that in future shows and events, and just excited about our topic today, which is going to be super exciting on nearshoring in Mexico, and we've got a super professional who's coming on now, who's just an absolute expert in this realm.
So let's introduce them and get them in. But before we do that, we're getting some really good feedback about the show. People are enjoying our approach to the supply chain industry. So we're happy to get that. So if the people are listening out there, if you have something nice to say, then sure, send us an email or a message on LinkedIn. And if you don't have anything nice to say, then we don't want to hear from you.
That's right. I don't want to hear it.
All right, my friend. Let me introduce our next guest. So we're joined by Alberto Villarreal, and he's the founder and managing director of Nepanoa. I hope I pronounced that right. He's bicultural professional with the ability to work across borders seamlessly. And Alberto founded Nepanoa with the mission of accompanying multinational businesses through transformation endeavors in the United States and Latin America by providing expert guidance and an unrivaled collaborative experience. Now, Nepanoa began operations in 2020 and has resources in Chicago, Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. Alberto, a very, very warm welcome to the show. I hope I did not butcher the name of your company.
Richard, you actually pronounced it very, very well. Thank you very much for doing that. And thank you for that very kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Hello, Karim. Good to see you.
Hey, how are you doing, Alberto? I was just talking a little bit before you came on camera. We're so happy to have you here and to be able to have your perspective and your thoughts. You and I sort of met when I was on my way out of Supply Chain USA in Atlanta. And I was just kind of running through, and I was talking with someone that I had been on a panel with at Manifest, which was on nearshoring done right. It was basically four people on the panel. 3 of them were all pro Mexico, and I'm also pro Mexico, but I was the one guy who basically just does all my work in Asia. And the whole thing was about nearshoring and the considerations and so on, and just what an exciting opportunity. And as we were talking, you were right there, and we started talking, and we walked out together, and I'm like, all right, we got to have you on the show. Let's talk about nearshoring. Let's talk about Mexico. So that's why we're excited and happy to have you here for sure.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Karim. Quick question. That panel you were on at Manifest, were you with Sam Rosen and Enrique Perret by any chance?
Correct. I was right next to Enrique, actually, and he was putting me on the hot seat saying, are you pro Mexico? Are you, because everybody on the panel was like that. And my whole thoughts around the entire conversation was really that, when it comes to any of these nearshoring options, right, whether it's Mexico or Canada or anywhere that's kind of trying to get a bit closer geographically to the United States, that there's considerations to really make sure that it's an actual effective and efficient solution beyond just being close, right?
Absolutely.
And these things that I tend to talk about, and I have a book that coming out soon that I write about, is all about materials, output, resource, technology, and costs. These 5 things. And if any one of those things are not really there yet, then a supply chain has the tendency to break down, not be as efficient, and so on and so forth. And so, I'm so excited to hear your take about the things you're doing in Mexico, what you're really bringing to businesses that are setting up there, how foreign direct investment is getting involved in this. I mean, stage is yours. Love to hear your take on it.
So that
Oh,
that
thank
all being
you.
said, Alberto. So what are some of the most important milestones that shaped your company's approach to international expansion?
Yeah, Richard, before I answer the question, Karim, I just want to say Enrique is in the board of Nepanoa and Sam is a client of Nepanoa. So that's why I was aware of that panel that you were in on Manifest. And thank you for that intro. It's a pleasure to be here and just share, perspectives. I completely agree with the books that you're writing your premise. And those factors, right, that make a supply chain successful, they're changing all the time. And that's why, Richard, having this conversation right now, it's important because Mexico just elected a new president 2 weeks ago. So things will continue to change. Richard, to your question about the milestones, right, that companies look for or that they should accomplish as they move into Mexico. Well, really, it all sparks with what we call at Nepanoa a trigger, right? And that trigger is, in this situation, okay, my supply chain could be better, or I could de-risk it, right? And what are different options for us as a company, for me as a company, to try to make it more efficient? And truly, the whole world plays a role. So it's not like somebody wakes up tomorrow and says, I'm gonna go to Mexico, right? Actually, Mexico is competing with many other countries, and not even on this side of the world, right? If we look at the foreign direct investment into China, over the last year, it decreased about 75%. Wow. So this means that companies are not investing that much in China anymore. Some of them are keeping, right, or at least part of their operations there, and others will remain there, right, for a long period of time. But when we look at North America and just the U.S.-China relationship, it is smart to start thinking, okay, what other options out there? And we have India, we have Vietnam, we have Mexico, we have Colombia, Brazil, but we also have the United States, right? So to Karen's point is, okay, let's look at that analysis as a whole and say, where does it make sense? So in terms of milestones, that's the first milestone, Richard.
Right.
It's understanding, okay, why Mexico? Where in Mexico? Because we have 32 states governed by different parties with different types of people. With access to different oceans, to different roads, to different rails, to different airports, right? And that becomes very important when we're making a decision. And that decision is made on all the factors that I just mentioned, plus real estate, plus utilities, plus the local supply chains that I could build while operating there. And if that whole case makes sense, then we move forward. And after that, Richard, we have the legal milestones, registering our entity or working with the shelter. Right? Who's going to be your attorney, your notary public, even starting a banking relationship in the country. Believe it or not, that becomes a key milestone. You cannot do anything with a bank account out there, right? Then after that, okay, let's find the site. Or if we're building the site, let's start building the site. At the same time, start looking for the key people that are going to run the operation in Mexico. That one becomes very, very important. Being able to have the ramp up from beginning to end. We're going to start with a plant manager, a controller, and not just talking manufacturing, right? But we can go in logistics, we can go in IT. And then from there, how are we going to build up, right? And it's really a process that can take anywhere from 5 months if it's a very simple operation and, the real estate is just a run-of-the-mill, facility that you need, all the way till 16, 18, 24 months, right? But those will be the milestones. But the key one is that decision, that vision of why Mexico, where in Mexico, what do you want to build? We call it at Nepanoa the North Star. If that North Star is very clear, all the decisions that you take throughout the process become easy, right? Because you know what you're aiming for. The issue becomes when you're really not clear and you're like, all right, I may start with a 50,000 square foot facility. Well, maybe 80. Well, yeah, guess what? You're delaying and delaying and delaying and delaying the process.
Yeah. By the way, I love that you're standing up, man. It's so dynamic. I'm thinking of doing it myself. If my old knees can handle it, I'm thinking I'm going to do it. It just makes the It makes it more engaging, more dynamic, and more fun to listen to. So well done for that.
Oh, Richard. Richard,
done.
happy to send you the link of my standing desk. I've had it for 4 years.
Well-
I've had it for 4 years, and it's one of the best investments I've ever made.
Well, look, you know, you did mention that there's global opportunity, but you personally, you're inspired to focus on Mexico,
Sure.
US market specifically. Why is that?
Richard, that's a very personal decision.
Yep.
I was born and raised in Monterrey, which it's one of the best cities in Mexico, if not the best for many. Super industrial, many companies. It's receiving a lot of foreign.
No bias at all.
No, but actually, I love my hometown. I love my hometown. But it's very funny. See, I was, emphasis in the was, in the past tense, I was a very good soccer player.
Yeah.
I got to represent Mexico at the U17 national team level.
Well
and,
done.
and even from that moment, I learned the importance of representing Mexico internationally, right? We would play Italy or Brazil or, you know, Guatemala, Honduras, because we were in the US, of course, right? So that's something that has stuck with me throughout my life. So when I started Nepanoa, the word Nepanoa in and of itself, it's a word in Nahuatl. And Nahuatl was the language of the Aztecs. The Aztecs were the most important civilization in the pre-Columbian era, right? Tenochtitlan, the great Tenochtitlan, right? The pyramids that you see in Mexico City, that's where Mexico City is built today. And even from the name, for me, it's very important to be able to represent Mexico the correct way.
Right.
Okay. So during my consulting career, because I was at a big consulting career company for 13 years, I was always doing international work for them. And when clients would say like, oh, we have to go to Mexico, and they would be like, little smirk. We're like, oh, well, the transformation is going so well globally, but then we get to Mexico, and I took that personally, right? And I was like, all right, come with me, come with my team, and we'll do it right. And thankfully, it did work, and it did work. So when I started my business, that piece of representing Mexico really stuck with me. With that being said, I've spent my whole adult life in the United States, and now I am an American citizen. So now that mission that I have is not only to represent Mexico, but also to represent the United States appropriately in doing business. And what a better way than uniting, right, both business sectors to make sure that we're doing business the right way across borders. And that's something that permeates across my team. We have right now 31 people between Monterrey, Guadalajara, Mexico City. Very, very lucky. I lead a great team. But that is part of the mission that Nepanoa has, to be able to unite both countries and perhaps even Canada in the future, right? Where we're truly building the North American economy more than just setting up shop in Mexico. No, the idea is that this actually works for a long time.
That's fantastic. But now, you know, you might have to lace up the boots. Copa America has started. You're gonna have to lace up the boots if Mexico start to struggle.
Richard, yes, we can have a full hour on Mexico's national team and US's national team. I actually are more bullish on the US national team.
I can give you 4 days. I can give you 4 days of the disappointment that comes with being a Scotland fan from Scotland. I mean, we're passionate, we love it, but my God. Anyway, we'll move on.
Well, you're in the Euros right now. We actually made it to the Euros,
and they're still alive. So, but
they're still alive. There's no chance. Yes.
And Alberto, although you may not think of it, this guy Richard was actually quite a soccer player himself. He actually played in college in the United States and was a good soccer player, but we can't really tell anymore. But
Richard, where at? No, I get it. Hey, buddy, I'm in your boat. Where did you play, Richard?
At the University of Alabama.
Oh my God. That's great. I played at Georgia State, so we were there in the Southeast.
We were right there many years ago. Many
years ago. Hey, man, we'll live off our memories.
All right, my friend. So it's not quite professional soccer, but it is high pressure. So now we're going to start the hot seat segment. And this is where we're going to ask you 3 questions that you'll answer as close to 5 minutes as possible. Our winner, our current champions, actually went over 5 minutes by 1 second. The previous champion or the previous title holder was 2 seconds under. So it doesn't matter if you go over or under, you just have to be as close to 5 minutes. And I have to be honest, I'm sure you'll agree, beating 1 second is going to be tough. But hey, maybe
we'll
you can
see.
do half a second.
Can I cheat? Can I have a timer with me?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not?
I'm
Okay,
actually
all right.
surprised people don't do that. Now I will give you.
Absolutely not.
I will.
You got to just wing it.
My honesty is killing me. I should not have asked you guys.
I will give you a little word of advice. You actually have more time than you think. A lot of people go way under. They try to rush their answers. But let's give it a shot. Are you ready?
No problem, Richard. Go ahead.
All right.
Up for a
Okay, my
challenge.
friend Alberto. The time starts now. All right. What advice would you give to a company considering its first expansion into the Mexican market?
Whew, that's a great question, Richard, because it truly depends on the industry and the segment that company is in. But first and foremost, you need to begin by stating, what do I want to accomplish in Mexico? Is this a contract manufacturer where it's going to be 1-2 years and then I'm out? Because that requires one model. Hey, I want to make sure that Mexico becomes a part of my whole operating model, my global operating model. That will take a different decision. Once that vision, that objective is set, then it is, okay, where are we going to set up operations? And that becomes very important. You need to understand your supply chain, you need to understand real estate costs, you need to understand the human resources, the legalities of it. And within those legalities, it's what type of permits do we need? Are we going to be operating on the Maquila IMEX program? Are we just going to be, a Mexico entity in and of itself? And then after that, it's select the right partners. We often see many companies fail because they try to do this on their own. It is fun. I promise you, it will take you at least 3 times more, the effort and the time to actually set it up than selecting the right partners, the right attorneys, the right, partners like us, like Nepanoa.
All right, I've got question number 2 here. Without having a crystal ball, but how do you envision the future of cross-border business between the U.S. and Mexico evolving over the next 10 years, decades?
Ooh, it's going to be fun, man. We live in interesting times, Karen. Mexico just elected a new president in Claudia Sheinbaum, President Sheinbaum, super capable woman, very, very smart. But it's everything, right? It comes with a risk. She has a super majority. And in any big company or in any government, one person making all the decisions and everybody just saying yes, 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 that usually doesn't bring the best outcome. So that is one of the risks that we have in Mexico. We also have elections in the United States come November, and that's another story, right? With that being said, the trend is very clear, right? Mexico is the country that exports the most to the United States. The United States exports a lot into Mexico. It's the best trading partnership in the world. And that doesn't seem to change because the geopolitical conflicts around the world, and we can have a whole other podcast just on those ones, are impacting that relationship positively. So even as we have 2 new presidents coming in, I think the relationship will evolve for the better and we will get more used to doing business together. I do think that the border, with the required investments, the investments that are coming, will be way more efficient. This is the future of North America for the next 15, 20 years, for sure. I have no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Alberto, you touched on trends there. So what are some of the emerging trends that you see in business expansion between the US and Mexico?
So emerging trends, we see the use of technology. Very, that one's obvious one, right? But when I say technology, don't think that I'm going to leave it at that, right? Technology, number 1 at the border, okay? Still, many companies, because the border requires, are actually using paper, right? When you get there, right? To make sure that they can validate the cargo that you have, right? So that becomes very, very cumbersome. So there's great companies, for example, Transmute is one of them, that are actually digitizing the border. That is very important. Then we go intra-Mexico, into logistics. Let's face it, insecurity, it's a thing in Mexico. Organized crime, it's a thing in Mexico. It's a very, very big risk. And technology is also helping, keep cargo safe, drivers safe, and just the assets safe. So that's number 1. The second one is in financial services. I want to say a year ago, literally, it was very, very cumbersome for a foreign investor to get into Mexico and get a loan. Open a bank account, right? Well, we have seen financial institutions change very quickly and very drastically, both in the United States and in Mexico, to start serving this market. And that is very important. Why? Because we're going to need financing to be able to capitalize on all of these opportunities. The third one, the people. The people are getting better and better and better and better and more competitive. Why? Because many more companies are coming into Mexico, right? So people are more educated than they were 30, 40 years ago. But in addition to that, they're already trained working with US companies, right? This is not new. People are actually seeking working with international companies and getting upskilled. We see a lot of movement in manufacturing, in logistics, in healthcare manufacturing, IT for sure, right? You have Oracle, SAP, Amazon, Tata, and other companies investing in Mexico as well, financial services. So overall, I see the future of North America more combined than ever.
All right, that was actually pretty good. Now you went over a little bit, but not by much. But
How much?
I was going to give you a signal when we got close, but what you were saying was kind of fascinating, so I didn't want to interrupt. So you're slightly over. You did pretty well, though, I have to say. You're not over by much, so well done.
Am I in the top 5 at least?
You definitely are in the top 5.
There you go. That's
and
good.
I promise I don't have a timer. I was just using the watch of the computer. Like so when I saw 8:40, which is 8:40 here in Chicago, I was like, all right, I need to wrap it up in about 20, 30 seconds.
You did good. I mean, the point is that, what great content and what great, insight that you're providing here, Alberto, because, many people don't really understand the ins and outs. We hear a lot in the media, a lot of buzzwords around nearshoring in Mexico, but they really don't know what it takes and what kind of decision making has to be done in order to actually do business in Mexico. Some of those things are fully there now. Some of those things continue to improve. I think you have had a very good point about the fact that in the last 20 to 30 years that more and more Mexican people have been working in larger scale entities in Mexico, getting that training, getting that knowledge. And that's the kind of things that are important. I guess I have a question for you that's a little different, but how do you feel or see, or are you seeing a significant amount of Chinese investment in Mexico as far as on the manufacturing side? Because, we all know that in many ways that's China's version of nearshoring. They're saying, okay, you don't want to buy from across the world. Let's just put factories closer to you.
Absolutely.
How does that sort of factor into the equation of, in my mind, I assume it would be good because it would employ more people and more opportunities and generate larger GDP. But I mean, what's your take on it? There's probably a pro and a con to that.
Absolutely, Karim. It's a great point. So funny, I hadn't mentioned nearshoring in while we've been speaking, because for me, as I mentioned, it's more of the North American economy that we're building more than just the nearshoring. But now that you mention it, let's remember that data follows the anecdotes. Okay, that is very important. If you look at the top 5 countries investing in Mexico in 2023, China is not there. If you look at the top 10, China is not there.
Wow.
We have Argentina investing more than China officially, right? From an FDI perspective. And just to put that into context, Mexico last year, depending on the report that you read, received between 36 billion to 44 billion. Let's take the conservative approach and go with 36 billion, right? You have the United States, you have Japan, you have Spain, Germany, right? Canada, of course, right there in the top 5. China, not even close. Now, what's the important data here? Last year, $110 billion were announced as investments in Mexico. This means that our announcement that haven't been capitalized yet, that are not real, are not tangible yet. Just in Q1 of 2024, add 32 billion to that number. To give you an idea, in the Q1 of 2023, it was less than 15 billion. Okay, so we're talking more than double, right? So we're talking about 140 billion that have been announced that are coming to Mexico. Okay, now we need to take a look at the data and say how much of that is Chinese investment. Now, I started this answer by saying the data follows the anecdotes. Anecdotally, we're all working with Chinese companies. You speak to attorneys, working with Chinese companies. Real estate, working with Chinese companies. But then you look at the data and you're like, okay, why is it not reflected there? And that's very important because many of the Chinese companies that are going into Mexico, they're going with a partner. Okay.
Correct.
So in some occasions, it doesn't show up as FDI.
Yeah,
sure.
Now, that being said, yes, it's real. Yes, it's coming. I'm pretty sure in 2024 and 2025, we will see it reflected in the data. Are they going to Mexico for the Mexico market? Indirectly, I mean, directly, yes. Indirectly, no. Why? Because remember that Mexico has now built these clusters, right? And we can talk about the automotive cluster in particular for Chinese companies, in which the immediate sale, yes, it is to another company established in Mexico. But then that piece or that part or that product that gets transformed, and it eventually ends up in the United States. Let's not fool ourselves, right? Chinese companies are going to Mexico to continue serving their clients in the United States.
Right.
That's wonderful for Mexico, yes? More investment, more capabilities,
and avoid
more
tariff
technology.
wars. And avoid tariff wars.
Well, yes and no, Karen, right? Because in the end, in USMCA, you need to take a look at the full product, right? What's the source of origin of the full product, right? So in that perspective, yes and no. On some occasions, you can have, right, those Chinese products in there, right? If especially the raw materials are coming directly from China. But yes, if there are a Chinese that it's now a Mexican manufacturer, of course, they will avoid those tariff wars. You are absolutely correct. But you mentioned that piece about tariff wars. In 2026, even though both governments, both the US and Mexico government have undermined this conversation, in 2026, there is an update. You can call it an update, you can call it a ratification, whatever you want to call it, of USMCA. Okay? If the US-China relationship remains as it is, what do you think the US is going to ask from Mexico in terms of Chinese investment into Mexico?
Yeah.
Right? So that's going to be a very interesting conversation, right? I hope that I can be in those conversations as part of the committees, because, well, it's one of the many items, right? We can talk about maize, we can talk about steel, we can talk, but it's going to be okay. How much Chinese investment is Mexico receiving in what industries, right? Because if the US-China relationship continues to degrade, right, to be worse and worse and worse, well, do you really would like to have Chinese business people and Chinese investment south of your border? So that's going to be very interesting, Kern. Very, very interesting in 2026.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's all in the name of economy meets politics. And we try to put these two things opposed from each other as much as we can. But in the end, they end up sort of interrelating in so many different ways that impact, especially the supply chain. And we've seen that. And, you know, I mean, I'm so excited about the opportunities in Mexico. Really, I am. You know, for us in my manufacturing world, we've always been geographically agnostic. So it's like where the best solution is where the best solution is. And so my hope is that as things continue to develop, that we'll be able to also, for our clients, do more business in that region. So, you know, very excited about it. And I think you guys have some cool events coming up too. Don't you do a large conference there, like the North Capital Conference or something like that? Isn't that right?
Thank you, Karim. It was actually last week. It was a Mexico Expansion Summit. It was a Mexico Expansion Summit. We had about 80 companies represented, 150 people in there. We had 3 secretaries of economy from different states in Mexico. So a little geography lesson. Mexico has 32 states, okay? So we brought the secretaries of economy from Jalisco. That's where Guadalajara is at. If anybody of our audience drinks tequila, it was it was actually done in mezcal. You know, well, mezcal is more Oaxaca, but Jalisco has some mezcal as well, right? Yeah, but the actually for tequila to be tequila, it's like champagne, right? Champagne has to be from Champagne, France. The same thing for tequila. It's from Tequila, Jalisco, right? So we had the Secretary of Economy, Roberto Arrachedera. There's a lot of R's in that name, just like me, Alberto Villarreal. But from Jalisco, he came to Chicago. We had Kurt Honold. He's the Secretary of Economy from Baja, right? So think about it, right? You have right there Tijuana, you have Ensenada, right? And delicious wine. And then we had the Secretary of Economy, Ulises Fernandez from Chihuahua. Chihuahua up north. Chihuahua is a state that exports the most into the United States, right? Wow. There you have Ciudad Juarez, and of course you have Chihuahua. And the beautiful thing is that the 3 of them are from 3 different parties, right? Wow. So their perspective on the future of Mexico is just wonderful because we just elected a new president, 3 different perspectives in there. But in the end, they all talked about, you know, how they from a government perspective, they could do things better to incentivize investment into the country. And it was a lot of fun because we had tequila, we had wine, and we had sotol represented there.
Perfect.
In addition to that, Karim, we had panels on manufacturing, logistics, talent, technology, real estate, and financial services. So the audience, it was a full day. The audience came out of there really knowing, you know, how to move forward in Mexico. And then the North Capital Forum, that's hosted by the U.S.-Mexico Foundation that Enrique Perret leads out of DC. They're having their big event in October in Mexico City, and we're going to be sponsors of that. We're sponsoring a logistics breakfast, and it's going to be it's going to be wonderful, right?
Maybe I'll come visit.
Karim, you're going to be invited. Absolutely. Richard,
Maybe I'll come visit.
Absolutely. But from a logistics standpoint, guys, we haven't spoken about logistics here, but the influx of investment that we're seeing in logistics today into Mexico, it's huge, right? So you have manufacturing, but their logistics is there. Why? Because clients are asking companies, hey, I trust you in the United States. I need you in Mexico. Right? The opportunity is there. And actually in Mexico over the last year, and I'll shut up, I promise. I know you have more questions, but we have seen a shift this year more into intermodal, right? And that tells you that there's a shift in supply chains. That tells you that more companies are using maritime to come into Mexico than move things around in Mexico, transporting it, looking at cost perspective. So the investment that is coming into Mexican logistics has just been phenomenal. And that's both anecdotal because we have plenty of clients in logistics, but also the data is supporting it as well.
Perfect.
Look,
No,
Alberto, this has been both fascinating and very insightful. And I love your energy, man. I love it. It's great. So
I'm trying to match you, Richard.
And we'll definitely get you back on at some point. But go ahead and let people know how they can get a hold of you.
Absolutely. So I'm great via email, alberto@nepanoa.com. Okay. Funny story about that. One of the reasons my business name Nepanoa is because of the meaning, but also because nepanoa.com was available. And as you know, guys, there are no .coms available.
Right.
So
right.
The best, some of the best $12 I ever invested to buy that domain. But email alberto@nepanoa.com, or you can send an email to connect@nepanoa.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. Alberto Villarreal as well. And I'm on every social media, right? Twitter, Instagram as well. Just go to our website, www.nepanoa.com. So works out.
Karim, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm, similar to Alberto, I'm on LinkedIn at Karim Kafoury, where I have a lot of, philosophy and leadership and talk about different things that I'm doing in the realm of supply chain. My main company is theatlasnetwork.com. And then we will be releasing a new KarimKafoury.com website soon to kind of promote the book and some of these other things that I'm into. So any of those ways is perfect.
Fantastic. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to follow our LinkedIn and YouTube pages at The Supply and Demand Show. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.